Interesting because it indicates a certain intermediate stage that people go through and they don't recognize that it might be something. They think there's something wrong when actually it's not. So the question was that, is it possible that one is vibrating intensely and the Shakti is flowing, the mind doesn't feel as lucid and articulate and bursting with clarity, as though the person has dumbed down in that moment? So once again, is it possible that one is vibrating intensely when the Shakti is up in oneself, the Shakti is flowing, but the mind doesn't feel as lucid and articulate and full of clarity? So it's actually a very good question. I liked it a lot because it demonstrates a certain state in yogic practice. In yoga, the core aim is that nobody becomes enlightened, no yogi becomes enlightened unless he or she understands how the mind works. And secondly, the mind has to come to a complete standstill. It has to stop. There must be no activity in the mind. There must be no chatter. There must be no constant. The wheel should not be constantly turning, what I call the train. The train should stop. That whole constant passage of 1, 2, 3, 4, or what famously called the monkey mind. So what happens when we are in this state of intensity and we actually feel stupider? That we actually feel for a certain time as if the mind has actually gone down a little bit, the mind has actually stepped down a little bit. There isn't that much swiftness, there isn't that much clarity, there isn't that much just response time goes down, and response time goes up, and also you actually feel that to think about this is such an irritation. To think about what I'm going to say is futile. So it appears, and it is very common, that many people say that my mind is not as sharp as it used to be. They are right, but they do not realize that they are so committed, or they are so used to their mind being in a certain way, that even when it goes into a higher level of functionality, they cannot recognize it. They want that knife to be like, they want the mind to be like a knife. They want it to be sharp and piercing and instantaneous response. But when you become yogically, you are progressing, when you are progressing in your yoga, the mind will calm down and the mind will shut down. So to say that I am doing yoga, the Shakti is flowing very brilliantly, but the mind is not functioning equally brilliantly, is to contradict oneself. You want your mind to calm down. You want your mind to stop. You don't want to move only in mental grooves. You don't want to move only in mental tracks. You don't want to only be in conceptualizations, because then that becomes the Shabda Jnana Anupatin Vastu Shunya Vikalpa, that yesterday also I was talking about Shabda Jnana Anupatin, like how the Jnana Anupatin, the way it is constructed is so that the verbalization or the vocalization, which is basically when we say our mind is not functioning, we mean that we can't verbalize or we can't vocalize what is being experienced. But it is very clearly said, no, Shabda Jnana Anupatin, that kind of knowledge or that kind of understanding is actually causes the whole mentality or the intelligence to dip a little bit, because object wide conceptualization, evidence free conceptualization, Vastu Jnana Vikalpa. But that is not what is going on here. What is going on here is that before you can start answering or interacting from a higher stage of consciousness, before you can let what is called the inner guide or the inner guru or the higher self respond and articulate, the mind has to come to a standstill first. Because as long as you're operating from the mind, it is in a sense second hand knowledge or third hand knowledge or 33rd hand knowledge, because it is the data. It is the data of fact. It is the data of knowledge till the moment. It is the data of what other people have said, what you yourself have said, because we are very committed to our notion and our image of who we used to be. If we have consistently been validated for being very sharp or very verbally fluent, very intelligent, our responses are very thoughtful responses, then when that aspect of personality starts transforming into something more powerful, we actually mourn it because we think I'm becoming stupid. But you will be surprised that actually when that happens, when you're vibrating intensely, you're vibrating. You know that you are no longer the person you are. Your body is at a different setting. Your body is at a different level of intensity. Your body is at a different level of functionality, because now only the mind is not buzzing. Your body is buzzing, your mind is buzzing, your emotions are buzzing, and your pranamaya kosha is buzzing. At all four dimensions you are buzzing. So you know that fundamentally I have altered, and at that moment what we are doing is we are privileging just that mental state, because that is what we are trained for. Most of modern education trains us purely and simply only in the mental state, and then they had to bring up EQ and stuff like that, emotional quotient, and then when EQ nobody was interested in the workshops, they brought in SQ, spiritual quotient, and now I don't know what they'll probably bring in FQ, fat quotient, or FU quotient, I don't know. but it is just basic that just a purely mental sharp response is not necessarily the optimal response. When we say higher self, sometimes you are giving an answer that is not anywhere in your database, that is not anywhere in your experience, that is not anywhere in your accumulations of knowledge and experiences. It is coming from a completely unique and creative place. It is coming from a completely truthful place, and this is not something that I can either deduce or I can project, or because of what I have experienced. This is an authentically unique thing that is emerging from me. That can scare the crap out of people because there is no reference point. This way of being, this way of functioning is so strange, it is so unfamiliar that people actually think, what is happening to me? I am falling apart. Yes, in a sense, yoga makes you fall apart. I keep saying that yoga demolishes you, but then it reconstructs you. And it always demolishes you at the lower level and it reconstructs you at a higher level. What Ken Wilber has said in much nicer words, that transcend and include, that you transcend the lower level, but you include all the knowledge and experiences and wisdom and insight of the lower level, and that is included in the higher level, but the higher level has to be different. Of a necessity, it will be different, it will be strange, it will be unfamiliar. So when you are no longer functioning from purely ratiocination, when you are no longer functioning from purely mental activity, or your responses are no longer just finely honed constructions of the mind. I have spoken about that how people create these mental formations and then they lock themselves in that fortress and they think that they have gone on to become enlightened. And yes, as long as they are in that fortress, progress has happened. But to the outside person, to the independent teacher or the master, you can just see that the person is going deeper and deeper into delusion. So this issue of when one becomes intense, the mind tends to become little retarded or little slow, and one is not as swift in one's mental responses or in one's verbal responses is actually not a problem. It is actually a sign that you're becoming more integral as a person. That now there is a, in one of our affirmations, it is very clearly said, I revere the wisdom stored in the very substance of my body. It sounds very crazy as stupid thing to say that sometimes the answer comes from the wisdom of the body. It does not come from the wisdom of the mind. It does not come from the wisdom of the emotion or even the pranamaya kosha. It comes from the wisdom of the body. There is a certain wisdom that you are accessing at that moment from the body. The body too has been created. Your vasana samskaras have interacted with your karmas and your inanubandhans, and they've created chakras, and the chakras then start pulling in the tattvas, and then the tattvas constitute the body, and that's a very, very phenomenally complex process, and the body does have certain knowledge and intelligence. And sometimes you don't need a mental answer or an emotional answer, you just need a basic physical answer. The answer is coming from the Annamaya kosha. Today, modern culture has privileged the Manomaya kosha to such an extent, the mental sheath. Forget the Vijnanamaya, at least Vijnanamaya is something worthwhile. It has privileged this purely rational or the pure cognitive function. It is just the cogitation, that is what it's called. In that word, there is already agitation. And yoga is about stillness. So you might be answering, or your system, your mind, body, emotion, prana might be resetting you to respond from a much wiser, more insightful, more wise level, but because it is not flowing in the old channels of verbalization and smart talk and smooth responses and back and forth patter, or somebody says something and you feel inadequate at that moment to address it at the same level at which it is flowing, you're making a mistake in wanting to address it at that level. You might actually be stepping down again. Whereas if you just let that process be and you see that process through, because the problem here is that it is always an intermediate stage. When you can feel that I am vibrating differently, my entire setting has transformed, I am actually now a new operating system is in place, and then you're saying, oh, but I should respond according to that old program. That's not going to work. When the mind calms down or when the mind shuts down, and then the higher consciousness can answer or the universal consciousness can answer, you will be aghast. And that is the only word for it. You will be aghast at what emerges from you. At that moment, you will be communicating things which you have never thought about in your life. You have never put them together in your life. You didn't even know. But at that moment, that little drop kind of falls into you, and there, something has flown out of you that is completely beyond all your experience, beyond all your expectation, beyond all your projection. The core issue is that we privilege mind too much. Yes, mind is brilliant. I am the last person to say, because I am fundamentally an intellectual person. Manava, the very word manava comes from manas, which means the mind. Homo sapiens sapiens, the animal who is aware that it is aware. Sapient means to be aware, to be wise, the man, the doubly wise. So the mind is fantastic. But the mind is not the only thing. Yoga is about all dimensions working harmoniously, all dimensions working integrally. The mind is not the only thing. So when we say that the mind is slowing down, I am feeling stupid. I know what you're saying because I went through exactly that. I actually felt I am not as sharp as I used to be. That, like that stiletto-like precision of response, because my nickname used to be Smiling Cobra, so anybody would say anything and the strike was instantaneous, and then a time came and the habit of the body is to strike and there is nothing to strike with. that impulse is not happening, and I'm like, where's the strike? Where's the strike? Demolish this guy. Just wipe this person out. Let them know what it feels. And Rohit Svenam courses through them, and nothing is flowing. Like, what the hell is going on? So it might last for years, and for years you might make the mistake of thinking, I have become stupid. No, you are now preparing. It is the foundational work for complete transformation. You all remember, no? I keep saying, who are you asking that question to, Sifu or Rohit? Yeah, because Sifu means that I have to be aligned with that Guru Kshetram. Sifu is the guy who is from the Guru Kshetram. Rohit is the embodiment, limitation, personality, you know, all the problematic issues of being in a body are Rohit. But Rohit is not Sifu. And this distinction most people do not make. They confuse the embodiment limitation with the wisdom that is flowing. And it's actually fundamentally the teacher's fault. Even though if the teacher says 1,000 times also, people will still start calling you Bhagwan and Ishvara, and you are physically perfect, you are emotionally perfect. All that stupidity will continue. But at least the teacher should make it clear that do not confuse me with the Guru Kshetram. Do not confuse what is flowing from me through the Guru Kshetram with my human limitations. No decent yogi will ever allow his disciples to confuse the two. They will never ever do that. It is the unscrupulous people, it is the cult people who set themselves up as divine, who set themselves up as. People actually tell me, why do you say that? Why do you may? Because it's the truth. Just yesterday, it was very interesting because I went to my guru's place and just talking about our daily routine, and I said, if I get up, the first thing I do after getting up is I have to light the diya. I have to light in front of Ganpati and Nataraja, and then only everything else. I mean, I can't. There is no other way. If I'm at home, it will happen like that only. So somebody asked me why. I said, because as soon as you light a diya and the flame is there, the Akasha Tattva in the environment is increased. Now, of course, I was told this by a yogi a long time back, and the truth of that was so apparent, it never occurred to me to ask, first of all, is that true? Or secondly, why? It never occurred to me. It was just one of those transmission things I got, and I'm like, yeah, obviously, like silly me, I didn't figure that out myself. It was so apparently pratyaksham kim pramanam. That which is evident does not require proof. It was like that for me. But the person asking the question, more Western educated kind of person, but why is the fire tattva not? And I actually paused, because I realized two things. Number one was that I've been doing this for donkey's years, and it never occurred to me to ask, because the obviousness of it was so great. And I could have responded at that moment that, that's the way it is. You don't do it, okay, fine, don't do it. You languish. Don't take advantage of every spiritual. And I didn't say anything. I just kind of let it be, and that the mind shut down, and then suddenly the answer came. Because the answer is not coming from the mind. Now the answer is coming from elsewhere. And I said, see, when you take a proper lamp and you put ghee or oil and you put the wick and then you light the fire, you're actually working with all four elements: earth, water, fire, air. Akasha, not Akasha, Prithvi, Jala, Agni, Vayu are all present whenever we. So because we have done our part in using, and remember, fire is an odd element, elemental is an odd tattva in that it has to be ignited. So we have to also ignite ourselves. Every day we have to ignite ourselves, just like we strike the fire and then we ignite. And so when all four of them come together, then the fifth, the Akasha, which is from where all of them descend, the Akasha instantly blossoms and expands. And it never occurred to me. Because when the person telling me was a person I respected, and the truth of that communication was so self-evident, it never occurred to me to ask or think or to have an explanation. And all these years I've just been doing it without any thought, because I'm not functioning from the mental concept of what is the reason to light a lamp. Whenever I read those articles, no, I want to, anyways, I won't say what I want to do, because I'm a yogi, I'm supposed to be compassionate, so I won't say what it is I want to do with them, but it involves certain immolations, yeah. The point I'm saying is, once you come to that state, when such questions are asked, the kind of answer that you require also flows automatically. It is no longer then only from here. It can be from anywhere. It can be from the heart. It can be from the body. So that the point is, the mind takes up too much of the space. The mind has become synonymous with wisdom. Not true. Now, some people, they will say that the emotions give us the better clue. Yes, because psychiatrists would always say, no, not what you're thinking. What do you feel? Where do you feel? Where in the body do you feel? What do you feel? And today it has well understood. So every interview, no matter what the situation is, how do you feel? Yeah, nobody asks, how do you think? Have you not noticed that? On TV, the only question they ask is, how do you feel? They are not allowed to ask the question, how do you think? Because emotions communicate instantly with other people. Nobody is interested in the thoughts of another person. All that is futile, all that is taking very deep, insightful uh, aspects of human behavior and then manipulating that. The point I'm making is that because we have accepted, we have created this consensus delusion that the mental conceptualization and then the smooth articulation or the swift verbalization of something, as I keep saying, merely because you have explained something doesn't mean you know anything about it, or merely because you have created some kind of concept around it also doesn't mean that you have understood it. That privileging of the mental process over all other processes where the problem comes from. And Shakti is not interested. When Shakti is flowing through you, the mind is actually a barrier. Because the mind, see, it's the doubt is always encouraged in yoga, because yoga is a very pragmatic, very hard-nosed. So, do you know? Have you experienced yourself? No, that is doubt. Suspicion is, no matter what the credibility of the other person, you will never take what they are saying and you will never try what they are saying. At every step you will have, I'm not sure, I don't trust you. Then if you are in doubt, it is okay. But if you are in suspicion, you can never come into Shanagati. Certain time in life you have to accept that this person is not out to cheat me, this person is not out to exploit me, and this person knows what he or she is talking about, and it will benefit me if I follow instructions, rather than consistently saying, to this much yes I know, but now prove yourself further and further. No yogi tolerates that beyond a point. They do not mind doubt, but if they see suspicion in the person, they'll throw that person out straight away. There is no time to waste. That much Shakti cannot be wasted on a person like that, because that person lives in the mind. And a person who lives in the mind can only progress to a limited extent. But we have created this whole thing where the mind is the pinnacle and the mental processes are the best processes, which is not true at all. The seer, the poet, the person who could access wisdom from a deeper dimension or a higher dimension was always well regarded in human societies. Today, that person is regarded as suffering from mental illness. And the person who can do Vastu Shunya Vikalpa, that person gets. You know. So it's an inevitable stage. It's an inevitable stage in your progress in yoga, in your sadhana, that you will actually feel the mind slowing down. It doesn't mean the mind stops, but the futile responses that the mind is habituated to, the fact that you are growing in yoga, it will not allow you to respond in that old futile manner, in that old limited manner. Now your entire organism will come and block you, because now they want you, even your responses must be authentic. You cannot respond as you were, or as you think you should have been, or as some person that you are imitating in the behavior. No, you will have to respond from your truth. You will have to respond from your authenticity, and if you cannot, then you will be stopped from responding. Why? Because the Shakti is up. Now, these are all the problems of yoga. These are all the not so well known aspects of yoga. But what is the problem? Even if it lasts 3-4 years, what does it matter? Because you have no idea what it does when you can just put your attention onto something, or you don't even need to put your attention on something because you're vibrating so intensely. And the kind of question that came to me yesterday, and there was no mental activity in the answer. The answer just flowed out of me. A literal laya, it was just like this wave went out of me in the answer. And I knew the minute it flowed out of me, I knew, yes, that's the reason. See, which is why you need to be in parampara, because when these things happen, the senior people or the teacher or the guru can tell you, yeah, this is how it plays out. These are the parameters in how it plays out. It's all right. Hold on. Don't worry. If all this thing happens spontaneously, or if, the biggest mistake people make is to start analyzing their experiences. Oh dear God. And especially today, then they start bringing in modern psychology and things like that, and I'm like, anyway, let's not get into that. Sometime maybe but yeah, every yogi has big issues with analytical psychology as it currently plays out. They have massive issues with that. So the point I'm making is that yoga chitta vritti nirodha, yes, yoga is a cessation of the modification of the mind stuff. In that question, the chitta vritti is being asked for. You are actually coming to the desired yogic state, and the complaint is that because it is astonishing. It is astonishing. The first few times it happens, you won't believe. Where did that come from? It is so without context. It is so without familiarity, so without experience, expectation. It flows from something that at that moment, this is not something that I could have articulated or communicated or said this or done this at this moment with my till today my life experiences. This is something that comes from beyond. And all artists say that, all creative people know that. They are always in the habit of getting in touch with that which is from beyond. And the yogi is always like that. And over time you come to expect it. Over time, as you become, and because of your regular sadhana, your energy is always at that intense state. Over time you come to expect it. That, many people they say that, but I don't know anything about it. When you need to say something about it, what knowledge is necessary will flow. No, of course, this is instantly misused. Because every donkey in the world, every jackass in the world will then start saying it is from the higher dimension, it is from my inner guide, I have small still inner voice that is infallible. All that is bullshit. All that is complete bullshit, because as Jesus said, by their fruits you shall know them. All this inner guidance, when the public disaster happens because of the inner guidance, you instantly know this person is fake raha hai. And all that works only on simple people, on ordinary people. It doesn't work with yogis, because they know very well if that is inner guidance or inner ego. Most people have one Himalayan sense of inner magnificence, And the yogis know that. Anybody who is a halfway decent yogi looks at another person and knows the truth of where that person is. So when somebody starts blabbering about inner guidance, most of the time they are making it up. Whatever is convenient for them is inner guidance. It's an old scam in spirituality and religion. That can't be helped. Only the authentic is counterfeited. Yeah, the fake is never counterfeited. You imitate only the authentic. I am saying it is possible. So when this state happens, it is actually a step forward. You have actually evolved. When the state happens that the Shakti is high, the Shakti is flowing, you are in real state of intensity, and the mind doesn't seem to be functioning. Kya ho gaya? What's happened? Why is it jammed? It's not jammed. It shut down. Because whatever you would communicate at that time would be a limited and partly ignorant communication. So this becomes little, and see, this is precisely how many things will you write? How many things will you tell people? Unless this kind of experience is shared, how does the teacher start talking about it? The experience has to be shared, then yeah, okay, right, and then you're like, okay, when did that happen to me? Okay, quite a few years back. Now I gotta go back in memory and think about it. Yeah, but yeah, it happens to everybody. That it causes a lot of trauma to people, because people are not used to their emotions being still, and they are not used to their thoughts being still. Most people are not used to their bodies being still also. So the human being is always jittery. In everything they are jittery. But the mind being still causes a lot of problems, because mental illness is regarded as such a bad thing. People are like, what is happening? My mind is not functioning as it used to be. Especially if you're a person who has been hugely validated societally for having a sharp mind, and hugely rewarded for having a very sharp mind, they go through a lot of trouble. They go through a lot of trouble, because they expect, especially when they are in yoga, they expect their teacher or they expect their fellow guru bhais or whatever to validate them for the mind. And in yoga you're validated for your Shakti, and you're validated for your attainment. You're not validated because this is constantly moving at hyper warp speed. And they get into real issues, because why am my smartness is not being recognized? Your smartness is being recognized, but your smartness has become the biggest bloody obstacle. Your ease at constructing stuff has become the biggest obstacle to genuine progress. So this is why, I wait, I listen, I look within, I am still. Remember our famous affirmation? I wait, I listen. That is what you need to do at that time. That trust process, Sharanagati mein hai, Guru is there, Parampara is there, I am in Sharanagati, something has happened to me. It cannot be something wrong. It is something necessary that has happened to me. Once you have that attitude, all this is very easy. You just swim, you just bounce past. But like I said, because yoga is now today being done in such difficult circumstances, that all stuff that was taken for granted and obvious is today now, it's all right. It's just yeah. Answers. Sarvam Shivamaya.